All right, hey everyone, are you ready for a deep dive? You guys shared a talk by Dr. Myles Munroe. And, well, let's just say this deep dive is all about why you and how you can use this talk to figure some things out about your own life.
Yeah, Monroe, he had such a powerful message about purpose and potential, so I think we can all learn a lot from what he has to say.
Oh, for sure. And he kicks things off with these five fundamental questions that, and I love this, he says that every single human being on Earth is trying to answer, whether they realize it or not.
Okay, yeah, that's intriguing. So what are these big questions?
All right, so question number one is, who am I?
Okay, well, that seems pretty straightforward, almost too simple, right?
You'd think so, but Monroe's point is that most people never actually take the time to truly answer that question, and that's why, well, he says that's why we end up chasing all this external validation, like we're trying to fit in, or, we build our identity on what's trending or what other people think.
Wow, okay, so it's like we're constantly looking for answers outside of ourselves instead of looking within. And that can lead to all sorts of problems, right?
Exactly. Like you said, it can create this feeling of emptiness, like you're never quite enough or you don't belong, which, let's be honest, who hasn't felt that way at some point, right?
Totally, and it makes me think about how many of our choices, even the small ones, are driven by that need to define ourselves.
Yeah, it's almost like we're trying on these different masks instead of just embracing who we truly are, which actually Monroe, he gives this example that I think a lot of us can relate to.
Oh, yeah. What is it?
Okay, so he talks about how people buy brand names just to feel a certain way about themselves, which I'll admit, I've totally done that.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I think we all have.
Right. It's like
Yeah.
we think that having that logo or label will somehow make us more worthy or valuable.
Yeah, and that ties into this idea of self-efficacy, that belief in our own capabilities. Like, when we're unsure of who we are, we become so much more susceptible to those outside influences.
Totally. And, it makes you wonder, like, how many of our decisions, our relationships, even our careers, are shaped by this underlying need to figure out, who we are.
That's a really good point, and it actually leads perfectly into Monroe's second question, which is, where am I from?
Okay, so now when you first hear that, you might think he's talking about like family history or ethnicity or where you grew up.
Right, your roots.
Exactly. But Monroe, he takes it a step further. He's talking about the source of our unique potential, like the origin of our gifts and talents.
Okay, yeah, I'm starting to see where he's going with this. Like, he's not just asking about our physical origins, he's asking about the source of our inner being.
Precisely. And to illustrate this, he uses this really intriguing analogy.
Okay, I love a good analogy. What is it?
So he talks about a manufactured product. Like, imagine you're going to a factory and you're observing how this product is being made, how it's being tested and refined before it ever gets that brand name stamped on it.
Okay, I can see that. So it's like the manufacturer knows exactly what that product is capable of. From the very beginning, they've designed it for a specific purpose.
Exactly. And so is he suggesting that God, as our creator, does he have a similar blueprint for us?
That's exactly what he's saying, and this is where his message gets so powerful. He's saying that we were born with purpose, not searching for it. We came pre-packaged, so to speak, with everything we need for a fulfilling life.
Whoa. Okay, I'm trying to wrap my head around that. So it's not about finding our purpose out there in the world. It's about uncovering what's already inside us.
Yeah, think of it like, you get a new phone and it's loaded with all these amazing apps, but you haven't even explored them yet. They're just waiting to be used.
Okay, that's a really good analogy because, I mean, we've all had that experience with technology, right? You get a new gadget and you're so excited about the possibilities, but then life happens and you just end up using the same basic functions over and over again.
And I think that happens with our lives too. We get comfortable with a certain routine or a certain level of achievement, and we forget to explore all the other incredible things we're capable of.
Yeah, it's like we're settling for good enough instead of pushing ourselves to see what we could really achieve, what we were designed to do.
And you know what, Monroe? He actually tells this really funny story to illustrate this point.
Oh, I love his stories. They're always so engaging. What's this one about?
Well, it's about a VCR.
A VCR, like those things we used to watch movies on.
Yeah, exactly. And he talks about how most people only ever learned how to use the basic functions like play, rewind, fast forward, but they never bothered to explore all the other cool stuff it could do.
Haha, that's so true. Like, I bet most people didn't even know how to program the recording timer on those things.
Right. It's like that with our lives. We often only use a fraction of our potential because we don't take the time to read the manual, so to speak.
That's such a great way to put it because it really is like we have this incredible piece of equipment, our lives, but we don't always know how to use it to its full capacity.
And so much of that comes down to, are we willing to step outside of our comfort zone? Are we willing to challenge ourselves and try new things, even if it feels a little scary?
Yeah, because sometimes those fears, those limiting beliefs, they can really hold us back from achieving our full potential.
Exactly. And Monroe, he talks a lot about how societal pressures can also contribute to this. Like, we're often told to be realistic and play it safe, which can sometimes stifle our creativity and our drive to pursue those big, audacious dreams.
Right. And that makes me think about his third question, which is all about figuring out why we're here in the first place. But I think that's a conversation for part two of this deep dive, because we could talk about that one for hours.
Oh, yeah, for sure. There's so much to unpack there, so let's save that for next time.
Absolutely. But in the meantime, think about this. What were those early dreams and aspirations you had? The ones that maybe got pushed aside or dismissed as unrealistic because, according to Monroe, those dreams, they might just hold the key to unlocking your true purpose and potential.
And maybe, just maybe, it's time to dust those dreams off and see what happens.
I love that. So until next time, keep dreaming big, and we'll see you back here for part two of this deep dive into the incredible wisdom of Dr. Myles Munroe.
So we left off with that big question, why am I here? Which I think is something we all grapple with at some point.
Yeah, it can feel so overwhelming. Like, how am I supposed to know the answer to that? What's my big purpose in life?
Right, and Monroe, he acknowledges that it's a weighty question,
Yeah.
but he also reminds us that it doesn't have to be this big mystical thing.
So it's not like I need to go on some vision quest or have a sudden epiphany to figure it out.
Not necessarily. He actually suggests that our purpose is often more practical and down to earth than we might think.
Okay, so how do we start to uncover it then?
Well, he uses this analogy of a seed, and he says each of us is like a seed that's been planted with incredible potential.
Okay, I like that, but a seed can't grow on its own. It needs the right environment, right?
Exactly, and that's what Monroe is getting at. He's saying that our purpose can only be fully realized when we're in the right environment.
So what does that look like for us? Like, what kind of environment are we talking about?
Well, it's a combination of things. It's our relationships, the experiences we choose to embrace, even the daily choices we make. But the key, according to Monroe, is to align those choices with a plan that's bigger than our own.
Now, I know Monroe talks a lot about God and having faith in a higher power, but what about people who might not connect with that perspective? Like, how does this idea of purpose apply to them?
That's a great question, and I think it's important to note that even if you're not coming from a religious or spiritual background, the core idea still resonates, like humans are naturally driven to seek meaning and purpose in life.
It's like we're wired for it.
Exactly. Psychologists even have a term for it. It's called self-actualization. And it's this idea that we're all striving to become the best version of ourselves, to live in alignment with our values, and to make a positive impact on the world.
So whether you call it God's plan or self-actualization, it's essentially the same thing. It's about figuring out how to live a life that feels meaningful and fulfilling.
Right. And Monroe would say that those childlike dreams we talked about earlier, those can actually be really helpful guides in this process.
Oh, yeah, like remembering what we were passionate about as kids before we started letting all those doubts and limitations creep in.
Exactly, because those passions, they often hold clues to the kind of impact we're meant to make in the world. Like, what activities did you lose yourself in as a child? What made you feel truly alive?
Wow. Yeah, I haven't thought about that in a long time, but I can see how that could be a really powerful exercise.
It is. It's about reconnecting with that pure, unfiltered version of ourselves before we started layering on all the expectations and self-doubt.
And once we start to get a glimpse of that purpose, then what?
Then we can move on to Monroe's fourth question, which is, what can I do? And this is where we really start to explore our potential, those unique abilities and talents that we bring to the table.
But I think a lot of people get stuck here, right? They feel limited by their circumstances, or maybe they've had experiences that have made them doubt their own abilities.
Oh, absolutely. And Monroe, he's very vocal about the fact that societal systems can often contribute to this feeling of limitation. Like, he criticizes standardized education for forcing people into boxes and measuring them by these really narrow metrics.
So it's not just about discovering our talents, it's also about overcoming those limiting beliefs that can hold us back.
Exactly. And he believes that our potential is often far greater than we realize, but we need the courage to break free from those self-imposed limitations.
That's so true, but it can feel really daunting. Like, where do you even begin to break free from those limitations?
Well, Monroe's advice is to start small. Don't try to overhaul your entire life overnight. Instead, just take one step, even a tiny one, in the direction of your dreams.
Okay, so, like, If I always loved to write stories as a kid, maybe I sign up for a creative writing class or just start journaling more regularly.
Exactly. Or if you were always fascinated by science, maybe you start reading books on a particular topic that interests you, or you volunteer at a local museum. It's about taking action, even if it feels imperfect or insignificant at first.
I love that. It's about trusting the process and believing that those small steps can eventually lead to something much bigger.
And as we start taking those steps, it's only natural to start wondering, where am I going? Which is Monroe's fifth and final question.
Yeah, this one seems less about concrete actions and more about like the bigger picture, our long-term vision for our lives.
Yes, it's about our ultimate destination. But Monroe, he doesn't frame destiny in this fatalistic way. He believes that our choices, our efforts, they play a crucial role in shaping our future.
So it's not about passively waiting for our fate to unfold. It's about actively creating the life we want.
Right. And that requires a certain level of trust, doesn't it? Trusting in ourselves, trusting in something bigger than ourselves, and trusting that even when we take detours or make mistakes, we're still being guided towards a meaningful destination.
Okay, I'm starting to see how all five of these questions are interconnected. They're not just random inquiries. They form a framework for living a life that feels both purposeful and fulfilling.
And it's a framework that anyone can use, regardless of their background or belief system.
So whether you resonate with Munroe's spiritual perspective or you're coming from a more secular viewpoint, the core message is the same. It's about understanding who you are, where you come from, what you're capable of, and ultimately where you want to go in life.
Exactly. It's about embracing the journey of self-discovery and realizing that you have the power to create a life that's truly aligned with your unique potential.
Okay, I'm feeling so inspired, but I have to be honest, there's still a part of me that wonders, what if my dreams feel impossible? Like, what if I've already made choices that seem to have led me down the wrong path?
Yeah, I think we've all been there, that moment where you kind of look back and you're like, oh man, did I mess up? Did I take a wrong turn somewhere?
Absolutely. Those doubts, those fears, they're a natural part of the journey. But Monroe, he wants us to know that it's never too late to course correct. Like, we always have the power to make new choices and shift direction.
So even if I feel like I've, I don't know, made some bad decisions or I'm on the wrong track, it's not like a dead end, there's still hope for finding my way back to, the path that's meant for me.
Exactly. Remember that seed analogy we were talking about earlier? Well, sometimes a seed needs to be replanted in more fertile soil in order to really thrive. And those detours we take in life, they can actually end up enriching the journey. They teach us valuable lessons that we might not have learned otherwise. Yeah, I never thought about it like that. It's like those experiences, even the tough ones, they're all part of a bigger plan.
Right, and even when things feel uncertain or messy, there's still a purpose to it all.
Okay, but how do I even start to figure out, where to go from here? It's like I need a map and a compass, but all I have is this like vague feeling that I want something more.
Well, Monroe would say those childlike dreams, those are your compass, and the map, it starts to unfold as you take those small steps we were talking about earlier.
So it's not about having every single detail figured out before I start moving. It's more about taking action and trusting that the path will become clear as I go.
Exactly. He has this great quote, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he says, we can make all the plans we want, but ultimately it's God's purpose that will prevail.
Whoa. Yeah, that's powerful. So it's not about trying to force things to happen according to my own timeline or expectations. It's about, I don't know, surrendering to something bigger, trusting that there's a plan unfolding even when I can't see the whole picture.
And that's where faith comes in, whether it's faith in God or faith in yourself or faith in the universe. It's about believing that even when things feel chaotic or uncertain, there's a guiding force leading you towards a meaningful destination.
Okay, I like that. But what about those times when the fear creeps in? Like what if I'm not good enough or what if I fail? How do you deal with that inner critic that's always trying to hold you back?
Well, Monroe would say that the antidote to fear is faith. When we trust in something greater than ourselves, whether it's a higher power or our own intuition, or maybe the wisdom of people who have walked this path before us, we find the courage to keep moving forward.
So it's like remembering that we're not alone on this journey, that there's support available, whether it's through spiritual guidance or mentorship or just the encouragement of people who believe in us.
Absolutely. And it's also about choosing to surround ourselves with people who lift us up and challenge us to grow instead of those who try to dim our light or hold us back.
Yeah, Monroe calls those people dream killers, right? The ones who tell us to be realistic and play it safe, even if it means sacrificing our dreams.
He does. And while their intentions might be good, Their words can sometimes stifle our potential, so it's important to be mindful of who we're letting into our inner circle.
And sometimes, it's those moments of discomfort when we dare to step outside our comfort zone and chase those dreams that feel a little bit scary. That's when we experience the most growth, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's like we have to be willing to take risks and embrace the unknown if we want to truly discover who we are and what we're capable of.
So even though it can be scary to challenge the status quo or go after something that seems far-fetched, those are the moments that really shape us and they show us what we're made of.
Exactly. And Monroe actually tells the story of David, the shepherd boy who became king, to illustrate this point.
Oh, right, David, he was the youngest son, completely overlooked by his family, but God saw his potential even when nobody else did.
It's such a classic underdog story, and it reminds us that our circumstances don't have to dictate our destiny. We all have those hidden talents and abilities waiting to be uncovered.
And sometimes those talents are revealed in the most unexpected ways. It's like we might find ourselves in situations that seem ordinary, but those experiences could be shaping us and preparing us for something much greater.
Precisely. It's all part of the journey. And Monroe encourages us to view every moment, every challenge, as an opportunity for growth and learning.
Okay, I'm feeling really motivated, like ready to take on the world. But there's one last thing I wanted to ask about. Monroe talks about choosing the right path over the good path, even when the right path feels riskier or more uncertain. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, so it's like this. Often we get caught up in what looks good on the surface, what seems like the safe or sensible option. But deep down, it might not actually align with our true desires or passions. And that's when we end up feeling unfulfilled, like something's missing.
So, how do we avoid falling into that trap? How do we know if we're choosing good over right?
Well, it often comes down to tuning into our intuition, that inner voice that tells us what feels right, and maybe more importantly, what doesn't feel quite right.
It's like trusting our gut, even when our head is telling us to play it safe.
Exactly. And remember those childlike dreams we talked about. Those are often clues to our right path, the one that leads to true fulfillment and aligns with our authentic selves.
Wow, this has been such a great deep dive. I feel like I have a whole new perspective on things and like a renewed sense of hope and purpose.
Me too. And remember, this is just the beginning. Keep exploring those 5 questions. Keep taking those small steps and keep trusting the process. You'll be amazed at what you discover about yourself and the incredible impact you're capable of making.
So well said. And Monroe, he leaves us with this incredibly empowering thought. He says, if what you are doing now is not what you saw for yourself in your dreams and aspirations, then what you are doing now is only temporary. It's like a reminder that we have the power to create the future we want, so go out there and make it happen.